Welcome to the King Center's Virtual Students with King Interactive Assembly. You will be introduced to several panel discussions with individuals from the people of the movement, family members, and those who knew or worked for Dr. and Mrs. King. Students will pose age-appropriate social justice questions to the panelists and receive realistic and interesting answers to their questions. This initiative allows students to hear firsthand from those who actually participated in the civil rights movement, experienced firsthand as a family member, and many who knew or worked for civil rights activist Dr. and Mrs. King.
The thing I'd want each one of you to learn from our discussion is, just like you study history in your various courses, and you will continue to study history, you need to know the way the country was, let's say 50, 60 years ago. It was quite different. Those of you who are of different races, when I was growing up, you would be put in jail if you were a friend to a black person, or vice versa. So I want you to understand that you now live in a great country, but the way it was several years ago, and what we had to do to make it the great country it is today.
And first of all, I'd like to say that it's an honor to be in this room right now. And also, it's an honor to hear about the issues and now see the diversity in the room. And thanks to individuals like Dr. King, who not only saw the issue, but were able to speak on it and act upon it. And my question is mainly toward Ms. Orange. So since you've seen all the issues that have been resolved and how laws have changed throughout the years, how do you feel now about the government, and how do you feel like that laws could still improve to better help the people?
I think we have a long way to go. We have some laws on the books that are not being respected, but we also have some laws on the books that are meant to tear us all down. What Dr. King was about, and that whole movement was about learning to live with each other in the beloved community. We've got to learn that it is okay to be different. One of the things that we're not recognizing, there's nothing wrong with white. There's nothing wrong with black. There's nothing wrong with Hispanic, Latina. It's nothing wrong with it. The problem is we're not honoring our differences. We've got to learn to accept our differences. If everybody was like me, we would be in serious trouble. All of my friends are different in each way, and I love each one of them for their diversity. So the laws on the book needs to start respecting all of our diversity. There is nothing wrong with acknowledging where we have come from, but we can go plenty of places and many of places together. One of the things that happens, and I think the King Center still does that, and I think Ms. Harris and Mr. Bullock can confirm it. They have the beloved community, and you all should do this as young people. They have the beloved community dinners where you invite people to dinner that are not like you, and you sit down and discuss it. I have this friend that we have vastly different political views. He loves the current situation with the government, although I still call him a friend. Just because his political view is different from mine does not mean I do not value him as a person. And so we've got to start learning to valuing each other as people. Absolutely. And so I love you all, even though I don't know your names, but I love you because, one, you're different from me, and two, because you make up this perfect nation. I don't like the melting pot because I don't want anybody to lose their own flavor. So I like us to be tossed salad. Because even in a tossed salad, you know what the lettuce tastes like, you know what the tomato, the cucumber, but it all comes together for a good meal.
And my question is, do you remember when Dr. King was killed, and how did it affect you and your family?
I can tell you exactly where I was. My sister was getting ready for her prom. My mother had just come back from the doctor because she was really still distressed over my father. And we were home, and it came up on the news, and I had never seen my mother cry. My mother did not even cry. It's something about Southern something and women. Still magnolias. They just don't show it. But when Dr. King was killed, my mother just broke down, and I'm really nervous now because my mother broke down. So I know exactly, and I promise you, if you can ask anybody that was around during that time, they can all tell you where they were the night that Dr. King was killed. And that night was a very scary night because even in our community, you did start to see the people, the younger people at that time, firebombing and coming through the neighborhood, and it was just really a very scary experience. And I say that kind of crazy because Dr. King was about nonviolence, and then there was a lot of burning and a lot of things that happened in our neighborhoods that first night because there was so much anger that he had been killed.
How do y'all feel about police brutality in today's age?
Police brutality against young black men is an issue. And it does not seem like the people in power are going to do a great deal about it in terms of training police. So I said to my two sons, when you are stopped by the police, I want you to assume that if you say the wrong things, that man is going to shoot you. So you are very careful. Now, some people might think that that's going a little bit overboard. There have been too many black men who have been killed because they said the wrong thing or made the police officer feel threatened. And I said, if this police officer shoots you, very little is going to be done about it. So just be careful, be leery, obey everything that that police officer said. If he calls you a racial name, so be it. I want you to come home walking and not being carried in a box. That is still an issue in this country. Police brutality and voter suppression. Those are still issues. But however, as I said to you, today, for African Americans, for women, for Hispanics, and Asian, this is still today, 2019, the best country in the world, notwithstanding the two things I've talked about.
Can you guys speak more on agape love?
Agape love is the all-encompassing, not selfish love. In the Nonviolence 365 training that we do at the King Center, we actually study what put Dr. King on the path to finding, what love is so he could share with people. And he would talk about the difference between philios, which is the love of friends. He would talk about eros, which is the romantic love. And then he also talked about the agape love, which is, it's almost like a spiritual form of love that goes beyond yourself, where you actually put the love of humanity before you. And it's a sacrificial type love to where loving other people becomes, what your burden is. And so that is the type of love that Dr. King was chasing when he went out and taught people to be nonviolent.
And my question is for Ms. King. First of all, I just want to say it's an honor to even be in the room with you guys. And my question is, what are some things that our schools and maybe even our parents haven't told us, some great things about Martin Luther King that may have gone unnoticed or we don't know about?
There were 3 children in the King family. Christine, M.L., and my husband, A.D. A.D. and M.L., of course, and our father were all preachers. And during those days of segregation, my father-in-law, who has always been like a father figure to me rather than a father-in-law, because as I said earlier, I'm only child, and I did not never know who my father was. And so During the days of segregation, my father-in-law would not tolerate us participating in anything that was segregated. He just would not have it. So, M.L., what I would always love with him was a preacher, a husband, a grandfather, and so much. And his track record stands out all over the world. M.L.'s track record is out all over the world. And when we could not participate in anything but segregated, after I married my Boaz, A.D., like that, after I married him, and on Sundays after church services, we could not go to dinner at the restaurant. So I was the cook. My mother taught me how to cook. And I was a very good cook because she was. I would cook the dinners, and I would invite all of the family members to come over and enjoy dinners. And so what I liked about M.L., he was a soul man too, like that. He loved the good cooking. And as I said, his track record is all over the world and all that. And me and my husband being right there to support him and all of that, we were always at M.L.'s side.
So you said you grew up with Dr. King as your pastor. How did that affect your relationship with your friends in your immediate community?
Everybody knew Ebenezer was an activist, if you will, kind of church. Daddy King worked in voter registration. He did a lot of things. But the people inside the church were really just doing what they do. Come to church, do what they do. So my friends knew we went literally across town to go to church, but no one thought it different until we got older. And then they would say, oh, you go to the Ebenezer. But growing up, it was just one of the prominent churches here in the city. But as I got older, it was like the Ebenezer.
Personally, when I heard her experience about her being baptized by Martin Luther King, it kind of hit me because I've always wanted to be baptized when I was little, and she got baptized by somebody who was very influential in the society during the time of discrimination, and she probably didn't realize how big of an impact he would be until now.
But the experience of being baptized by Dr. King was interesting. When we went behind the pulpit for the baptism, the first thing at 7 years old or 6 years old is this water. I mean, I knew it was water, but I didn't know how deep it was. And when I attempted to get in the water, I was literally going to go to the bottom. And I said to Dr. King, who was already standing in the water, I can't swim. And I also said, I'm changing my mind. I don't think I want to do this anymore. And he said, don't worry, you're okay. You'll be okay. And so he grabbed my hand and he helped me down the steps. And in a very gentle way, we went through the process, and then he hugged me and we got out the water. And then I never, ever, and I really didn't tell the story of being baptized until one of my minister friends reminded me, you never tell people that you were. I said, because I never thought of the connection of being baptized by Dr. King, coming to the King Center, going to SCLC, that all of that was divine, and I never knew what that experience meant. And so take it understanding that this may be for you a changing moment in your life.
What was it like growing up being a king?
I didn't grow up like being a king. I grew up as being a barber, because if you heard me say just a little bit earlier that I am an only child, and so for me, growing up was with a mother, a single mother who protected me. So I have always been sheltered, protected, loved all of my life, so that many of the issues that faces us today, starting and my heart is hard, like with segregation, growing up, that it never was, never was a problem for me, because having been, as I said, God that shielded and loved and protected all of my life, it was just that when I married into the King family, that I began to learn the life of the King and interact with each member of the King family individually and get to know them. So to answer your question, totally, it has been a blessing growing up as a king. It was a godsend.
Thank you.
I want to give one story too, because I did grow up. This is my beautiful grandmother, and our family is very close. When I was a child, I was bad. You know what I mean? I won't even lie about it. I would get in trouble. Me and the principal, we knew each other by first and last name. And so for me, growing up with that responsibility, because I had 2 older brothers who went through school before I did, so they knew who I was related to and would just shake their head. If your family knew how you were acting, they would be ashamed. And so when I was around 9th grade, it really hit me then and helped me to grow up to learn to live like by a good example, because you don't ever want to bring shame to your family. And I hope you guys, y'all are good kids, right?
Yeah.
If Martin Luther King was still alive today, what do you think he'll say about our generation with his views on like unconditional love and nonviolence?
His views on love are not really specific to time. You know what I mean? Like the same views that he had back in the 40s, the 50s, and 60s would still apply today. If you were able to actually read his works, it would be like he wrote it yesterday. That is how strong his views are. And when you look at who he studied, like Dr. King was a man who studied the works of philosophers. He studied, the Bible itself and studied several ministers. He would study different movements that took place over time. And what he understood was that people are people. And the day that they're in doesn't change like the condition or the conscience of their spirits, because you see a lot of the same bitter spirits today that you saw back then. And so he would attack and address them pretty much the same way. That's why the work that we do here at the King Center is so important, because we remind people that love is the only thing that you can use to combat hate. If you try to fight your way out of a situation, then you just continue the fight. And so we try to remind people that love is what quiets the spirits and storms of people so that they can get past it.
So my question is, what type of advice will you give to a young person, myself, for their voice can be heard?
So as a young person, make sure you have coalition building. Make sure you join organizations with similar focuses and goals. And don't try to do it alone, because this system will overcome you if you're single out there making noise. So nonviolence has a protection to it because you have numbers. And Dr. King had numbers that understood of the people, by the people, and for the people. So therefore, you have to get educated, and then you have to understand what are your rights in the Constitution. Dr. King understood his rights, and he challenged his rights in the Supreme Court. So therefore, it's both things: being active, join coalition, and then make your issue not a race issue, but a people issue. That's where your power comes from. And we teach you all this in the workshops, but that's the most mistakes we made. If we try to do it singly, individually, this system will overcome you.
We talked about what happened in the past and how we changed the country. Let me say this to you. The greatest weapon you have against racism, against anything, any obstacle, is education. There are three weapons: education, education, and education. Your teachers are your very best friends because they stand in front of the class every day as a role model. And I think you can agree with me today that yes, you can grow up to be president of these United States. The opportunities that you have today, notwithstanding some of the unpleasantness that you may endure, the opportunities you have are unprecedented. There is absolutely no reason why you or any of your classmates should not be successful. So, with a good education, you can accomplish anything in this country today.
Thanks for watching our virtual Students with King Assembly video. It is our hopes that this video piqued your interest to learn more about the philosophy and methodology of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. We invite you to check out our various programs at the King Center by visiting our website, thekingcenter.org. Also, please consider a visit to our site to attend in person one of our many sessions we conduct during the school year. A special thanks to our sponsor, the National Football League.